Thank you to Kurt Bruening for this awesome Patreon raffle idea, and if you'd like your idea for Media Mementos to come to life, then stay tuned until the end of the video and I'll tell you how. Mars Needs Moms, a movie whose reputation more than precedes it. No Google search of Mars Needs Moms is complete without seeing dozens of articles or videos detailing how this was the downfall of motion capture animation on the big screen. What if I told you though that wasn't actually correct? And furthermore, what if I told you that Mars Needs Moms, often considered one of the worst and most disastrous animated movies of all time, actually had quite the wholesome history behind it? Well, gather around, everybody, and let me tell you all about the complete history of Mars Needs Moms. Mars Needs Moms started its life as a children's book in 2006, written by Berkeley Breathed. Contrary to popular belief, the science fiction classic Mars Needs Women was not a main inspiration for the book. In actuality, it was just Breathed's way of writing a sci-fi homage for kids. But he knew that this wouldn't just stay a book for long. Eventually, it was going to become a movie. In his own words, "I knew Mars Needs Moms would be a movie seconds after the title came to mind." Sure enough, Breathed's predictions came to reality when the book found its way into the hands of none other than Robert Zemeckis. Robert Zemeckis, who had previously been known for fantastic movies like Back to the Future, had developed a different sort of reputation in the 21st century, mostly as the motion capture guy, as he was using his studio, Image Movers Digital, to produce motion capture animated pictures like Beowulf and the Polar Express. These movies had mixed reception, let's just say. Some of them, like Polar Express and Monster House, are considered classics, while others, like Beowulf, not as much. No matter whether the audiences liked the movies or not, most people seem to universally agree that this motion capture stuff was just a fad. It was creepy and uncanny. There's no way that this was going to stick around for longer than, say, 10 years. Zemeckis, however, was always trying to prove the audience wrong. He felt that with IMDb's previous filmography, the stories and characters had all been on point, but the technology was starting to look dated. Therefore, his next two projects, A Christmas Carol starring Jim Carrey and Project to be Determined, they would have to have some of the biggest technology that IMD has ever used. People would no longer look dead in the eyes or have creepy, ill-adjusted movements. These movies would finally cement motion capture as a legitimate form of animation and would develop some new technologies in the process. While A Christmas Carol was in pre-production, Zemeckis wanted to get a jumpstart on the next movie after that, and found that Mars Needs Moms would be a great choice for the next movie. It had heart, it had science fiction elements, it had adventure, it had a good message. Everything you need for a viable film. Everything, that is, except for a good script. See, once the rights were secured, Zemeckis got some currently unnamed writers to pen a draft for Mars Needs Moms, and the results were, terrible. So terrible that little to no information on the first draft has ever been released. By this point, Christmas Carol had already begun filming, so Mars Needs Moms needed to get started at once. But clearly, these writers were not up to the job. But who would be instead? That answer came in the form of Simon Wells. Wells had been out of work for quite a while, so he had his new agent reach out to all of his industry contacts to get him some sort of job. It didn't really matter what, he just had to do something. At the same time that his agent got him in touch with Zemeckis, Zemeckis had already considered Wells for the job. They had previously worked together on Polar Express, and Zemeckis was very impressed with Wells' vision and integrity, so he gave him a call one day and said, "Hey Simon, how would you like to do one of these motion capture movies, huh?" After reading the book for himself and coming to the same conclusion that Zemeckis came to, Wells eagerly accepted the writer position, then got right to work. Simon Wells wasn't the only person who got excited about writing this script. There was also the factor of Mary Wells, Simon Wells' wife. The two ended up writing the first draft together. That draft, while not as bad as the initial one that Zemeckis turned down, was still not quite what Zemeckis had in mind. However, he did see a lot of potential in the original ideas that the two Welleses came up with, so he decided to keep them on board, and for many weeks, they would debate about what plot would go where, what development should happen when, if at all, and after the first couple of meetings, it became clear that the Welleses and Zemeckis wanted to take Mars Needs Moms in two totally different directions. After a lot of work, the two parties reached some common ground, and yet another draft was finally done. For the most part, Zemeckis thought it was pretty good, but he had two major complaints. The first was that he didn't think that the third act fit the rest of the movie. He felt like it came out of nowhere and didn't seem like a natural progression that the movie's tone had built up. So he decided to do it all himself. His second note was that this film was currently very male-centric. With the grittiness, darkness, and action involved, Mars Needs Moms would be very enticing for a male audience, but what about the female audience members? What would they have to rally behind in this movie? As it turns out, it would be the brand new character of Key. She was a Martian who learned about Earth by watching outdated TV shows and movies, and would not only provide some female elements to the movie, outside of the mom in the title of course, but would also add some much needed comic relief. By this point, the story was getting a bit serious and dark, not exactly the tone needed for a family film. With this new character in place, it was clear that, on some level, Mars Needs Moms was heading in the old Don Bluth approach of having there be dark, bad things happening all throughout the movie, with some comedic relief sprinkled in here and there of course, but as long as everything has a happy ending, it's gonna be okay. You can put the kids through whatever you want. And thus, the script was finally done. So now it was time to get the cast together, starting with the main character, Milo. Milo is a kid who has his mom abducted by the Martians, then goes on an out-of-this-world adventure to get her back, as well as to solve the mystery of why Mars needs moms. This 9-year-old boy would be played by famous child actor, 37-year-old Seth Green. Okay, maybe he's not a child actor, but he's young at heart? Okay, all jokes aside, this was actually quite common for Image Movers Digital to do. Some people might not know that the actors for the kids in the Polar Express were actually not kids. Sure, the performances were dubbed over by child actors, for the most part. Looking at you, know-it-all kid. But all of the physical performance in the motion capture suits were done by adults. Zemeckis didn't want just any adult playing the part of Milo. Because of this new developed technology that would be extra precise when it came to measuring movements and facial features, he wanted someone with boundless energy, almost a Jim Carrey rubber face sort of thing. Of course, Jim Carrey was already busy filming Christmas Carol, so he wasn't in the cards. But neither was Seth Green at the time either. What happened was, one day, Green came into the IMD office to pitch either a movie or a show, and the crew was instantly captivated by his level of expression. By the end of the meeting, he was officially their star. On the part of Seth Green, he was captivated by the script. He grew up with a very supportive mother himself, and found that the message was something that kids of this generation needed to hear. That lesson, of course, being that moms might not always be fun, but they're not meant to be your friend. They're there to be your mom. Even if their rules are unpopular, more often than not, they want what's best for their kid. Seth Green's excitement for Mars Needs Moms, though, was nothing compared to Joan Cusack's. Cusack got the part of Milo's mother and was captivated by the script the moment she read it. As a mother herself, she found that the lesson was very important to hear, but also, she found that the script was very well-rounded and could be something that could appeal to everybody, which, in fact, was one of the mission statements that the film had. Zemeckis wanted a universal approach for Mars Needs Moms. If there was something you liked, such as science fiction adventures, humor, or strong characters, you could find it in this movie. Keep that in mind as we get to the end of this video. Every day on set, Cusack would be asking Wells or Zemeckis what her character would do in X situation, and try to get into her head so that she could not only portray her character, but also become her in a sense as well. All of the other actors, especially Kevin Cahoon, who played Wingnut, were all selected with their physical performances in mind. If the performance they gave on set wasn't what the directors needed, they could either be redubbed or replaced later on. In case you can't tell, this budding technology was the pride of Mars Needs Moms. Most of the pre-screening press that the movie received was all about the tech. After all, this was going to be the first step in becoming that one movie made for everybody in the world. Simon Wells, who was now also the director of the film, took this into account when he was instructing the actors on set. Since motion capture allowed every angle of the scene to be caught all at once, there was a lot more room in the schedule for having the actors riff, improvise, and come up with their own ideas to add into the script. Everything was very actor-centric. If they wanted to try something without warning, they could, and if it didn't land, oh well, let's just do it again. It created a very relaxed environment on set, maybe even a bit too relaxed. Instead of going to their trailers when they're not on set, taking the motion capture dots off, then coming back in about an hour, having to put them all back on, and then doing their scene, the actors wouldn't usually leave the set at all. They would drape a blanket or a cloth over themselves in order to not get detected by the cameras, then would just do whatever they wanted. They would joke around, rewrite lyrics to songs and make them dirty, have shuriken fights on set. Sure, it was messy and disorganized, and Disney wasn't too pleased when they found out about this, but it made for a fun environment. And as any movie maker or even movie watcher will tell you, when the actors are having fun, it shows on screen. There's a certain sense of spontaneity or excitement that just can't be perfected by going through the motions and faking it. For example, take a look at a movie that I surprisingly keep referencing a lot during these complete history videos, but Fat Albert 2004. Even the people who don't like this movie say that it has this fun vibe to it and that it's just wholesome to watch. The reason is because everybody was having a blast on set. Same thing goes for Mars Needs Moms. To the cast and crew, this was also important because, well, the film got kind of dark in places, so having this sense of fun on set was kind of important. This family bond was as strong as it could be. It was almost as if they weren't aware of the dark developments that were happening behind the scenes. Though, of course, they were fully aware, they just didn't let it get them down. What kinds of dark developments? Well, around this time, Disney's management had changed. Like, 100% changed. Similar to what happened in Meet the Robinsons production history, the people who had initially approved of the original version of Mars Needs Moms were now long gone. The people who were now in charge of it not only weren't thrilled with Mars Needs Moms in general, but were also not big fans of IMD overall. They, much like many members of the movie going public, were not too thrilled about this whole motion capture thing, so after Christmas Carol bombed in the box office, they decided to officially shut IMD down. That's right, you heard it here. Image Movers Digital was not killed by Mars Needs Moms. It was killed by A Christmas Carol, as well as Disney's interference. After IMD was officially scheduled to be closed, there were some discussions about shelving Mars Needs Moms altogether. The Disney executives who now ran the company didn't feel that Mars Needs Moms had much of a future. But by this point, they were too far along in production to end the movie prematurely, so they decided to just release it when it was finally done, and then that would be it. The Roger Rabbit sequel, Calling All Robots, the Yellow Submarine reboot, all gone. They would never see the light of day. No matter how successful Mars Needs Moms was going to be, that was the end of the line. Aside from that one incident, you know, the catastrophic decision that shut an entire company down, there were barely any dark points in the entire production history of Mars Needs Moms. Same goes for the animation. Once the movie was done shooting, the animation had begun, and unfortunately for this video, there aren't many stories to tell from the animation. It just went smoothly, which I guess is good for the workers and all, but yeah. When it came time to dub the original performances over, the only actor that got replaced was Seth Green. Again, as I've said before, he already knew this was coming, so there were no hard feelings there. He ended up getting replaced by another Seth, being Seth Dusky. Even though Milo's voice was now being provided by a different Seth, The marketing department didn't seem to realize that. The original cut of the film still had Seth Green's voice. This was the one that was used for test screenings and the like. And it was this cut of the film that they decided to use in the marketing. The marketing that, by the way, was less than ideal.
Is that a boy or a girl? They look so nasty, make a robot hurl. Turn this shit off!
Because Disney didn't have any faith in Mars Needs Moms, they relegated it to the role of marketing guinea pig. The marketing department at Disney was told that if they had any crazy or experimental ideas, Mars Needs Moms was the movie to try them on because if it worked, great. If not, well, that was kind of expected. This resulted in Mars Needs Moms having a large social media presence, but less of a presence on television or on signs out in the real world. Now this is where we get some conflicting information. According to Simon and Wendy Wells, the rough cuts of Mars Needs Moms got some good reviews from audiences, and it was Disney that lost faith in the film after seeing it. But other sources say that the film didn't test well at all, causing Disney to lose faith in the project and reduce their marketing budget as a result. If you ask me, I'd say the truth is kind of in the middle. I think that, to the Wells, Mars Needs Moms scored well enough, but it scored well below the Disney standard. Disney, who saw that there was already a crowded field of animated movies that year, felt that it was best to just take the bullet with Mars Needs Moms and accept that it was going to be a loss. According to The Hollywood Reporter, Disney insiders knew that Mars Needs Moms was never going to do well, so they braced for around a $30 or $20 million opening. But as it turns out, when Mars Needs Moms was released on March 11th, 2011, it even failed to make those low expectations, only grossing about $10 million worldwide during its opening weekend. It received one of the lowest financial returns of any animated film in history, only grossing just under $40 million throughout its entire theatrical run. The movie had a budget of about $150 million, with sources claiming that Disney invested an additional $25 to $50 million for the marketing campaign, meaning that, yeah, Disney took a big hit on this one. Critics were not too thrilled with the end result. The strange thing was that none of them seemed to agree on what the movie did right. Some, like Jim Schembri of the Sunday Morning Herald, hated the story but loved the visuals, while others, like Tom Horgan of the Star Tribune, simply put, hated everything. For the most part, though, the audience consensus was that the film was too dark for families, too juvenile for adults, had this uncanny valley quality to the animation, and that the lesson, the same one that the cast and crew prided themselves on, didn't go deep enough and mostly felt superficial for the story's sake. Because Mars Needs Moms had such a negative reception but with such mixed critiques, to this day, the cast, the crew, and especially the audience members are still throwing theories around as to why this movie never took off. Looking at all these theories, it just points to the fact that people didn't want to see another motion capture movie, especially not one in this style. The critics especially were swift and negative, scaring everybody away. That, combined with the gradually reduced marketing strategy, all pointed to Mars Needs Moms being the failure that Disney expected it to be. In later years, Mars Needs Moms would only receive attention for being one of the biggest box office bombs of all time. However, there have been some people, a small but growing percentage of the audience to be clear, that's trying this movie out either for the first time or with fresh eyes, and thinking that, you know what, maybe it's not that bad. Sure, the animation can be a little weird at times, but the characters are likable and the story takes some risks. I'm not quite sure if I fit into that category, but I don't think it's nearly as bad as everybody says. Basically, no matter how much of the movie I watch, whether it's the whole thing or just clips, my response is basically going to be this.
That was weird.
While the cast is still proud of what they've made today, the crew, that's a bit different. In a recent interview, Simon Wells said that if he was going to make Mars Needs Moms today, he would have taken a lot more inspiration from Monster House instead of real life. In his eyes, the technology was just not there at the time to craft the world that he wanted to bring to life. The technology, while yes advancing, was still primitive in nature. Therefore, it was unable to eliminate the uncanny valley. So instead, he feels that if it had a more cartoonish and upbeat approach, maybe people would have been more drawn to it and would have given it a fair shot. It still would have killed the studio, of course. After all, that was never coming back thanks to Disney. But it wouldn't have this viscerally negative reception that it has today. So I guess at the end of the day, whether you like Mars Needs Moms or not, you can't deny two core facts. One, it didn't actually kill Image Movers Digital. And two, it was more of a passion project than anything else. Everybody behind the scenes was having a grand old time. They formed running jokes, they bonded over the message, and they were thrilled to experience this crazy motion capture technology. So that, my friends, is the complete history of Mars Needs Moms. What was set to be a grand adventure that appealed to everybody turned out to be a dud that appealed to nobody, but hey, at least it didn't kill the studio. Well, folks, thanks for watching the video. What'd you guys think? Have you seen Mars Needs Moms before? And if you did, what did you think? And did hearing the stuff that happened behind the scenes change your perspective at all? Comment below and let me know, because I'm always excited to hear what you guys have to say. And now, it's time to thank our wonderful Patreon people, starting with our Masters of Fate: Alan Nielsen, Brian Deso, Chan 11, Drew the Stew, Kev Messick, Platinum Bass, Sakamoto, Quiet Chap, Ryan Williams, Timey, Toko Blahuvian, and Woody Woo. And now for our executive producers: Albert Robinson, Blackjack, H.R. Hoffman, Indiscreet One, Jeremiah, John Lopez, Kurt Bruenning, Leaf Storm, Ravioli Supremo, Unkale, Vanilla the Rabbit 98, and who else but Zane. If you too would like your name read at the end of every Media Mementos video, or if you would like to suggest an idea for a future video, then consider donating to the Patreon. There's a link in the description below for you to check out. Also, there's a link to the Media Mementos Discord server as well, so stop on by and say hello. Alright folks, thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you guys next time.